Hello and welcome to Super OK, where we try to do a decent enough job to entertain people with our opinions on video games. I am Zando, and I will be your host this week as we talk about some things related to gaming, some things not related to gaming, and probably just go on a whole bunch of tangents.
It could be anything.
Oh my God. I thought I was alone here. Turns out I'm being attacked by ninjas. There's a 20-sided ninja, aka Dale.
Yeah, I'm here. Also, I hate to break this to you. The plural of ninja is ninja.
Yeah. Sorry. So being attacked by ninja.
Yes.
So there's a 20-sided ninja. There's also a dork of the ninja.
What's up?
Oh, he's got it wrong. Damn it. Yeah. Can you not spell any of your names right?
Nope.
What's happening here?
Nope.
If you are in the Discord, you of course recognize Dork of the Ninjas, who's hanging out with us today. Thank you so much for being here and joining us on the podcast. How you doing today, man?
Doing all right. Pretty good day overall. Had to work,
Excellent.
But not bad.
Cool. Well, we start every week with our highlight of the week. It's just something that makes our life a little bit brighter, a little bit happier, just made us feel good on the inside, give us all those little barflies and things, make us feel good. And we always let our guests go first. So, Dork, tell us about what your highlight of the week has been.
Well, I actually went on a date with somebody that I actually had been talking to for a while, and that actually went very well.
I didn't know we were gonna spill that. It was a great time.
Yeah.
I appreciated you paying for dinner. Thank you.
Hey, it was I had to be a gentleman about it.
That's great, man. What'd you do?
We didn't
liberty to share.
We just had dinner and just kind of hung out for a few hours, so that was just nice. Went to Italian place that's like a chain. I think it's Carbalas is how you say it. I can't pronounce things for my life. I can't spell and I can't pronounce things. Just get used to that.
Carbalas?
That's it, yeah.
Or Carrabba's?
No, Carrabba's. I think it's now you've confused me.
Carrabba's is like a chain.
Carrabba's, I think it was.
Okay, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Cabela's is fishing equipment.
Yeah, I think Dale might be right.
Did you go and buy a lure?
Was it fish lasagna?
Was it seafood?
Did you have lures and jigs?
There was shrimp in my pasta. I don't think that was it though.
Cabela's Big Buck Hunter. That's what we did on our first date.
You got to hunt that pasta.
Starting hot right here.
Oh man! Now, Dork, for those of us like myself who have been out of the dating game for literally 20 years.
Oh boy!
Like what's a first date like? I don't remember.
Well, it wasn't I think it's a date I went on with her before years ago, but just have tried it out again. But it depends on the person. It depends on how things go. It's pretty much like I was talking to her for like weeks before I ever actually went on an actual date with anybody in person. Like I met her online. Okay. So there's a lot of talking before a date even happens anymore these days, for me at least.
Okay. Fair enough.
A lot of the awkwardness that happens on a lot of first dates is not there as much as it used to be.
That's great. But
I did have one of those the other week. That wasn't great. Oh, it was instantly like, oh no, this is not it, Chief.
Yeah.
Now, I recall an episode of Cartoon Planet where Brack described love as a male part of the species going to a female part of the species. Keep in mind, this is 90s, so it's a little bit outdated. And said, hey, do you want to go on a date? And she says, sure, I'd like to go on a date if you're lucky. And they go to a restaurant, and she orders something called a salad. And he orders a big piece of beef that he eats. And that, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is love. Would you say dating is similar to that, or?
I mean, they might have some things like with that. I'm not sure if it always works that way. Exactly.
I mean, it's Space Ghost. It could be antiquated, but I thought
it might be a little bit.
All right,
yeah, a little bit.
Dale, tell us about your highlight of the week.
Sounds good. I will. But first off, I have to just get something off my chest. You never asked me how I was. Hurts me.
Well, so does an attack by ninja. I was opening the podcast the way I wanted to, and all of a sudden you just descended upon me.
A fair point.
And you didn't ask how I was doing either. So
true.
I mean,
I didn't have an opportunity.
Turnabout is fair play.
I didn't have the chance.
And other titles of Phoenix Wright cases.
I object. Xando, how are you doing today?
Objection.
I'm doing all right. I'm a little bit sleepy, but I'm doing okay. How about you? How are you, my friend?
You know what? I'm actually still recovering from my highlight of the week, which is the fact that I went to a Jeff Rosenstock concert last night. It was absolutely amazing. The openers were a band called Gladie, which is Gladie, and someone named Sidney Gish. And I am saying that because both of the openers were absolutely amazing. You should check them out. Gladie is kind of like your typical pop punky indie kind of thing, female fronted, absolutely amazing music. And then Sidney Gish does like loop songs. So it's like she builds the song on stage with everybody like listening. And that's also, it was like, she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. And then Jeff Rosenstock always puts on such an amazing show. But I want to call out how he started the show because he was like, hey, everybody, there's a lot of people here today. It's a sold out crowd. I want you to look to your right. I want you to introduce yourself to that person. I want you to look to your left. And I want you to introduce yourself to that person as well. And now, if anybody starts getting in those people's faces, if anybody gropes those people, if anybody starts giving them a bad time for whatever reason, I want you to get your other good friend on the other side of you and get that other motherfucker out of here so that everybody can have a good time.
That's a level of love right there. That's so good.
It was so amazing. And I mean, he put out a hell of an album last year. It's called Hell Mode. It's really, really good. The whole album was just, everything about it was great, except for the fact that security didn't know how to do their job. And so there were some kids, like literally children, like 12 and 13-year-olds, who were crowd surfing. And luckily, it was only kids who were crowd surfing. If you go to a show and you're like over 18 or over 200 pounds, don't crowd surf. I'm not saying that to be ableist or to body shame. I'm just saying it's a bad time for everybody below you. And I can say that as an idiot who tried to crowd surf at over 200 pounds. It's just a bad idea. You'll get dropped on your head. But these kids, they got crowd surfed all the way up to the front. And what's supposed to happen is then security grabs that child, sets them down on their feet, and they, hop back along to the crowd and they get back in the pit or whatever, right?
Instead, they took the kids up front and just beat them mercilessly.
In this case, there was no security up front.
Oh, jeez.
And so the first kid who crowd surfed got pushed all the way out front, and then they were like, there's no security here, we don't know what to do, and the crowd just pushed him all the way back, still crowd surfing to his family, who like grabbed him and pulled him down. But then other kids saw this one kid crowd surfing, having a great time, and got up and went and were crowd surfing, and they got pushed to the front like they do. And one of them straight up got dropped.
Yikes.
Oh, no.
Like, they were okay because kids are made out of rubber. It was fine. But, like, the guitar player, this was, like, right before their encore. The guitar player, like, started, to his credit, not on the microphone. He was just, like, yelling at the security, like, you guys got to get up here. Like, you got to do your job. And then they come out, they do their encore. Their encore is, like, 5 songs. After the first song, another kid crowd surfs. Another kid does not get caught by security. And so Jeff, now on microphone, is like, hey, if you're going to be at the barricade, you need to be catching them kids. And the bouncer starts to talk back to him. And so Jeff takes his monitor out so he can hear him. And then he goes, hey. We play a lot of shows, man. This is the only one where kids are getting dropped.
That says a lot right there.
Yeah, exactly. So Jeff Rosenstock is a true legend. If you like punk music, you'll love Jeff Rosenstock. And if you just like good people, you'll like Jeff Rosenstock. He also, by the way, does the soundtrack for Craig Over the Creek, which is a very fun cartoon. So, yeah. Check him out. And then also Friday, I went and saw SmackDown, but I've talked for so long that I feel like I don't want to talk too much about it. But I will say this. The amount of pyro that they put off for their new champion, Cody Rhodes, was absolutely insane. I have a video of it. And if you ask me nicely in the Discord, I will post it. It was a lot. It was a lot of pyro, man. A whole lot of pyro.
And if you ask him aggressively to not show it, he's going to show it to spamming in chat.
Yeah, I'll
will.
do that too.
I'm actually surprised it's not in there already.
I mean, nobody's asked me nicely yet.
Well, nobody knew it was an option.
Well, that's why you got to listen to the podcast.
Did you hear that, Dork? You got to listen to the podcast.
It'd be weird if I listened to this episode, kind of, but okay.
Right?
No, man, it's great. Get to hear your own opinions on things.
And be entertained, we hope.
Yeah. Xando, what about you? What was your highlight of the week, man?
So it's a twofold kind of thing, and I know I've constantly sung praises about my job and how much I enjoy it. But this past week was a 60-hour work week for me.
Oh no.
And I had a 16-hour day on Monday and just a lot of late nights and stuff like that. And so by the time I finished I got halfway through the normal work day on Friday, I was dragging ass. I was tired. And I still had to go. I was all done. So anyway, Friday night was great. I got to leave work a little bit early. And then I got to go home and get a haircut, which I desperately needed, and hang out with the kids. And then I went to bed. I went and laid in my bed as soon as I put my daughter down at about 8:00. And by 9:00, I was asleep. And the next morning, my wife took the kids and went and did some errands and stuff like that. And I didn't have an alarm set. I didn't have to get up and make breakfast. I didn't have to get up and do anything else. I just slept until 10:30. So I had over 12 hours of sleep, and it felt awesome. One of my favorite things in the entire world is sleeping in, and it doesn't happen very often for me anymore. So when it does happen, and when I can wake up from sleeping in and I don't have anything to do and I just hang out, it's fucking magical.
It's the best.
So that happened to me on Saturday.
Nice.
It just felt like a miracle being able to do it.
It does. It takes me back to the good old days of just living life, working retail, and waking up at 3 p.m. and don't have shit to do and just playing video games, man.
Top secret confession time. I'll go first. I woke up at 3 p.m. yesterday. I no longer work retail. But wait a second. You said you worked retail? I worked retail. That's weird.
What?
Yeah, I worked retail.
I worked retail too. What is that? That's crazy.
Wow, that's crazy. It's almost might be the topic of the episode, guys. I mean, we've all had crappy jobs, and in retrospect, probably all of our past jobs have been bad compared to where we are now. But it sure is fun to look back at those times and what a shit show they really were. This being a video game podcast, we're going to focus on jobs we had where gaming was a big part of it. Big box retail.
Yeah.
Best Buy, GameStop, Target, Sears, Kmart, Walmart, Circuit City, Toys R Us. All of these big chain retail shops have had video game departments if they weren't just focused on gaming entirely. But we've all worked at least one of these places, right? So let's talk about it.
Yep.
What was your first retail job, and did it have anything to do with gaming?
Who wants to take that first?
You can.
Okay.
You're the guest, man.
Okay,
We're going to look to you all the time.
The way you stare at me scares me a little bit, but okay.
That's not what you said at dinner the other night.
Hey, but the thing is now Dale's staring too, and it's making me uncomfortable. But my first work job I worked was Walmart. My main job there was working the online grocery mainly and stuff like that. But I did brush up against the online orders that had video games and stuff like that. I picked up more Switches than anything else during that job, but also was not a whole lot of actual dealing with the gaming side of it. But we all know that the hell that is Walmart, that in and of itself. I have more trauma from working that job probably than any other job probably out there.
Now, have you worked any retail jobs that had to do with video games?
Oh, I was a store manager of a GameStop.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that checks out. Similar to you, my first retail job was actually I worked seasonal for Gags and Gifts, and you're like, what? Why does Gags and Gifts need seasonal help? Halloween. Because they sold a bunch of costumes. Now, some of those were gaming mascot costumes, but that's about all that I had to do with video games there. And they couldn't keep me on afterwards because I wasn't 18, and they sold some spicy adult novelties. So I got let go. But then shortly thereafter, I was able to get a job at a KB Toys, where they hired me on the spot, which should have been very much a red flag, but was not because I was young and an idiot. And then afterwards, I moved to a Kmart where I was working their electronics department for a little while. And then I worked literally everywhere in a Kmart that you can. Then I worked at Best Buy as a personal shopper. Then I worked at Apple. And I also worked at like a comic shop part-time during some of that where we didn't carry any video game stuff. We carried like video game like posters and statues and comics based on video games, that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So I have been entrenched in video game retail for a good chunk of my retail life.
Yeah. My first retail gig was working at Meijer, which is it's in and around Michigan. I don't think they go too much farther out of the Midwest.
They're
But
making
they're
their way south, though. They are making
Oh, yeah.
their way there.
yeah, so they are basically Walmart kind of. So it's like groceries and home goods and electronics and all that kind of stuff.
Walmart, but way less evil.
Yes.
Yes.
But I got started pushing carts and bagging groceries because I started working there when I was 16, and you had to be 18 to work anywhere else, including the toy department, which means I wasn't able to go over and like sell video games to people. But I would go over on my lunch break and play Smash Brothers Melee all the time. After that, I worked there was a couple another gig, and then I started working at Best Buy at seasonal. And I got edged out of being a permanent employee after that by the manager's poker buddy, even though I literally showed him up on everything. So that kind of sucked. And then I got work at Circuit City, and I was there from like 2005 until 2009 when they all shut down. And then I get back into Best Buy doing the mobile phone sales, and then to Family Video, where it was video game rentals. So that was really cool. And then the last retail thing I did was GameStop. I was a key holder, but I was like what was it? The
SGA.
SGA, yeah, senior game advisor. Yeah. So I was able to open and close and have all those duties, but I was not technically management.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the last retail.
You can manage a game advisor, and that's it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That is insane that you had a key but weren't a manager.
Yeah.
Technically, you're the manager on duty unless
Yes.
there's another manager there. That's
Yeah.
the assistant or the store manager.
Yeah.
I worked my way up. When I worked at GameStop, I didn't just start as like a store manager. I went from the bottom basement game advisor, worked my way up through every position to store manager.
Very nice.
It seems like the scummiest way to like make people do managerial shit but not pay them as managers.
Yeah.
You think they pay them as managers? That's funny.
I mean, my GameStop tenure was from February of 2017 till November of 2017. I was not there long, and I did it because I was like, my wife had just finished her run at seminary, so she was done with her full-time school. So I was like, all right, well, we're going to switch gears. I'm going to go from part-time schooling to full-time schooling, and I did that. So, but I still needed to make cash on the side, so I found GameStop. So that was my thing, and then it was like right before my daughter was born. So like I started working there. A month later, we found out my wife was pregnant, and then like my last day was Black Friday. I was like, if this is going to be insane, I'm going to have a kid. I'm not going to have time to do all of this, so I need to cut this out.
So you decided to work Black Friday?
I worked Black Friday, and then like the day or two after was also like employee appreciation, where your discount was doubled.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed on to do that, and then I bailed.
Nice, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think in my last day I spent something like $600 because I just told all my friends, like, hey, I'm leaving. It's employee appreciation. Come and tell me what you want. I'm just gonna buy a whole bunch of shit.
Perfect.
Yep.
Magic.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty good perk.
Yeah. So aside from that perk, are there any other perks that you guys had at your retail jobs?
For me, it depended on the spot. KB Toys gave me 15% off everything in the building except video games. So that's stupid as hell. If I wanted like I don't know, Big Bad Beetleborgs action figure, I guess I could get a discount on that. But
I like how you say that as if you there was a time in your life where you didn't want a Big Bad Beetleborgs action
I
figure?
specifically chose Big Bad Beetleborgs because I never gave a shit about it.
Fair enough.
Don't lie to us, Dale. Don't lie.
The first thing that popped into my head was like a Bebop action figure from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I went, "No, I'd like that actually." So I didn't go with that one. I never cared about Beetleborgs, though. But everything except video games, so that sucked.
Yeah.
Best Buy was a little bit nicer. We paid 5% above cost on anything in the store, but it turns out that a lot of video games are loss leaders, and so it was actually often cheaper to pay regular retail because there wasn't 5% margin on them, or if there was, they didn't have it in the system as there was 5% margin. Like, I'm not saying Best Buy is above a little bit of internal espionage to make it their employees not get a discount on stuff they should. But I don't know, to be perfectly honest. But I can tell you that in all of these places, the real gaming benefit was being the first person to know that stuff was going on clearance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
I remember those days.
Hey, this like special like Ultra Dragon Collector Fucker edition of, I don't know, some game that I don't give a shit about.
Big
13.
Bad Beetleborgs.
Yes, no, like the collector's edition of 13 with like a headshot of David Duchovny included or whatever.
Yeah,
going on sale for like $7.
That is such a specific reference.
Sweet.
I always loved when Best Buy would do the penny strategy guides.
Yep,
those were always
the amount of pennied out stuff I got from GameStop over the years.
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
it was great. It was absolutely great. And then just for the record, at least everywhere that I worked, I don't know if this is the same at real video game stores, but the big box stores that I worked at, there was no way for anyone to like hide stuff in the back or whatever nonsense people scream about. There was no way for us to like get the pre-orders early or like any of that shit. Maybe you guys had a different experience, but that was not one of the perks at the places that I worked at.
I definitely did. So at when I was at Circuit City, I was in charge of doing the weekly clearance markdowns, by which I mean I shopped first and didn't mark down things I wanted to buy and then bought them later. I also was in charge of the inventory for video games, so I could say, oh yeah, that's definitely in stock, and just hide it in a drawer until I wanted it.
Nice.
Or if I really wanted to, there was a time a buddy of mine worked there, and he just like straight up lifted the shelf that's on the floor, and just like stuffed something down there, and nobody knew about it except us. And we're like, well, we'll just say it's there, and if anybody else happens to do it, we'll just say, hey, this is in stock. We found it. It was here, and then they would buy it. It's not something we did often. Most of the time, we would stash stuff if it was something we were going to buy later in our shift, because they typically frowned upon you buying stuff while you were on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was never anything where it's like, oh yeah, we're totally out of Switches. Just kidding. Brian's going to get the next one, like stuff like that. And we also had, that was around the time of like internet shopping became like in-store pickup started to be a thing.
Yeah.
So we had to, also worry about someone buying online, but so few people did back in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back when I was, the big thing that happened when I was at GameStop, I got a lot of, the one thing I almost forgot to bring up when I was thinking about this is the fact is I got a lot of game codes when I was working there, because they would love to give, the vendors would send us codes all the time. So like, hey, talk about our game. So I have several copies of Madden I've never played. Almost every Call of Duty from, I think it was Black Ops 3 all the way through till when I left, which was, I think, Cold War.
Okay.
So, and then also, of course, they gave us 15% off merchandise in the store. I think it was like 25% for like pre-owned games. And then on top of that, the cool, nice little thing that they let us do is they actually, if you had a used game or whatever that was in stock, if it wasn't like the only copy, they let us actually borrow it and just basically rent it from the store.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I got to play a lot of games that way. And also,
it was what, like 3 or 4 days that you could keep
it?
I
think it was 4 days, I think, is what, if I remember correctly. The thing that I enjoyed doing about that is when I had my Rock Band set back in the days, I would just borrow whenever the discs came in, and I would just rip the songs from it into the main game and just bring the disc back into the store like the next day. So it's like I had all of the ones for Guitar Hero that was from like Guitar Hero 5 onward that were
Yeah.
like didn't have to pay for any of those discs at all. Like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
I totally played this for one
Yeah,
day.
with those they would put a code on the back of the instruction manual.
Yeah, for some of
And
those,
so
yeah.
like when I worked at Family Video, I would get those digital codes all the time.
Yeah.
Or even before I worked at Family Video, I would go in and they would put the instruction manuals like on the case, and that's how they just like they didn't keep them behind the counter or anything. I would just go in, I would take pictures, I'd go home and I'd download the tracks.
Yeah.
It's so that's and then also like when digital movies started coming, I've got an insane collection of digital movies of stuff I'll never watch just because I got it all for free. And like Fallout 4 came out and they gave you a copy of Fallout 3 for free. I got all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also the cool thing of being at Family Video is whenever we would get, most of the time we would get video games in like 5 days before release, and we could take those home early and play them. So I remember like when I started, so I was like transitioning from Family Video to GameStop, and it was like the end of February 2017, and everybody was like, "Oh man, I'm so pumped to play Horizon Zero Dawn." I was like, "Yeah, I've got a copy sitting in my car." They're like, "What?" I was like, "Oh yeah, Family Video, I get to take it home for free, like before it comes out."
Oh, that's so funny.
And then it was like the guy, my manager at the time was like, "What the hell, man? That's illegal. You can't do that." I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I keep my system offline and I play. There was a time like 2K games were like you can't rent them, but like we would still find a way to do it anyway because somebody had like found out that a Family Video member had taken a picture of the entire roster of the WWE 2K whatever game and put it online, and so then they kind of cracked down on that stuff. And so we also weren't supposed to rent Grand Theft Auto 5 before it came out, but I fucking did because I didn't care.
Yeah, but like if you're 2K games, how are you, like, it's 5 days before release, how have you not already put out the entire roster for your game that launches in less than 5 days?
Yeah, I
like,
don't know.
You were doing your marketing wrong.
That's I remember there was a point in time where we didn't know the Smash rosters before Brawl came out for every character that was in Brawl. I remember that. Like, it was a surprise to some people. Oh, hey, Sonic's hiding in here somewhere and stuff like
Man.
that. Like,
the Brawl, like before Smash Brothers Brawl came out, and how they would update that Smash website every day. That was such a magical time for me.
oh my god,
Like,
it was so good.
Uploading that or refreshing that page every day to see what the new thing was, and I'd be like in the back of Circuit City. I was like, I know this is going to update at 2 p.m. I got to find out what the hell it is. And the internet was awful, so like it would be like new character, and the image would slowly load, and it felt like it was like 1996 again. I was like, oh my god.
The cool thing about Brawl for me though was the fact that it actually released on my birthday, so that was a nice birthday present I got that year.
So what's that? March 8th,
9th.
9th. Yeah, so close.
Yeah, you're very close.
Yeah. Oh, very, very close. So what would you say was the pinnacle of your gaming retail experience? Dork, what do you got?
I had a time when I was working there, I worked there from the time period of 2017, like literally the time you were leaving to the end of 21. I want to say it was. I think it was. I left. Yeah, it was like 21. So I was during the height of the PS4, Xbox One era, and there was the time that I had a person. I've had 2 times I remember. I had 2 people that were like the fanboys of the 2 different systems, like arguing back and forth to each other. And I'm like, I'll never forget the time I basically just diffused both of their arguments, and I ended up selling them on the console they were talking crap about the entire way through. I had one guy who was like, PlayStation has all the good single player games. I'm like, yeah, but you have Game Pass on Xbox. He's like, what? I was like, it just completely broke him because he didn't understand it at all. And he's like, oh, that actually sounds pretty good. I'm like, yeah, it does. And the other one's like, this other time, the other guy's like, they have all these good shooters. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have any of these single players. And listed off like 7 different games that PlayStation has, like ended with God of War. They're like, that does sound good. Like, just getting like a 19-year-old kid just looking like, oh, hey, maybe I shouldn't be I'm obsessed with this one thing so much where I make it my entire personality. It was one of those moments of like, yes, please stop.
That's cool.
That is awesome. Mine is actually similar, except it's not the kid, I was saving so many kids. This is my favorite part. Saving so many kids from getting bad games during the holidays.
Oh, I know
Where
that
like
feeling.
I was the only person when I worked at Kmart who knew anything about video games. Like it was me and like 900 octogenarians who worked there. And so it would be like a mom would come in and they'd be like looking for games, and it's like, oh yeah, they really like cartoons, so I guess I'm gonna get them like Cody's house on Cody into House on DS or whatever. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. Have you heard about any of these other games? Like these are all so much better and the same price, you know?
Mhm.
Or like when I was at Best Buy, like parents coming in and just having no idea what their kids wanted, but knowing that the
Oh, yeah.
game had something to do with guns. And that was around the time the game Gun had come out. So
Oh,
they
no.
would be like picking up Gun, and I'm like gently pushing their hand back to the shelf. Like, no, you don't want that. I promise you. Your kids either want like, you know, Call of Duty, or maybe they want Medal of Honor, or maybe they want this, or maybe they want that, or Grand Theft Auto, or like tell me about your kid and I will tell you a game that they will like that is actually good, you know? And so just being able to like be these children's like Christmas guardian angels to
Yeah.
save them from getting like bullshit games was always a real delight to me.
That reminds me also, I also loved, one of my favorite things to do was to deny like 16-year-old kids from getting an M-rated
Yes.
game. Oh, it's so good. And they would try to argue with you like, who's going to know? I'm like, my company, I can get fired and fined for this. Not going to happen. It was one of the most satisfying things to turn kids away from that.
Yeah.
The amount of kids.
Similarly,
Good.
sorry, go ahead.
The amount of kids that I've had try to pick up GTA 5 that were like 15 years old, I'm like, how old are you? And my best part is I try to say like, this age, like they're like, I'm 17. I'm like, all right, what's your birthday? I'm like, you don't have an idea, do you? They're like, no, go, just go.
Yeah. Similarly, I had when I was at Family Video when like Saints Row 3 came out and like Grand Theft Auto, and the kids that would come in like 8 or 9 years old, and they'd come in with like their grandparents or their parents, like, we're gonna rent this game. And I would always ask, I was like, are you familiar with this game at all? I was like, no, I just know he wants to play it. I was like, okay, like specifically like Saints Row 3. I was like, okay, well, I like would pull the parents aside. It's like, I just want you to know, very early on the game, you are fighting with items like farts and jars. I'm like, oh, whatever, that's funny. I was like, and then it turns into you're beating them with double-sided dildos. I'm like, oh, wait, what? Like, yeah, you're beating you can beat people in the game with sex toys.
Yep.
Like, oh. And then it turned to the 9-year-old kid, like, hey, why don't you go pick something else? the daggers those kids would shoot at me.
I know exactly.
I
what
just,
you're feeling.
yeah, I did not care. And it was always fun just kind of stomping on that. But I feel like my height of my retail experience was in like 2007. I was like promoted from, they had me in like car audio when I started at Circuit City. And then they quickly realized like, oh, you know a ton of shit about the media department. Why don't you go over there? And they sent me over there. They made me full time. And I was just like walking around like the king of the fucking castle. I had a belt pack for my Nintendo DS, which was huge. And I had one for my PSP, and I had one for my Zune. And it was like a utility belt for Batman, man. And I was walking around like the coolest dude ever. Also lame as hell, but I was a walking demo kiosk.
I was about to say, you're like, you think you're the coolest in the world. Look back at yourself 5 years later, you're like, oh no,
man, because I had like little Yoshi plushes hanging off, and like, you know, just like every GameStop employee, 1,000 different lanyards that the Nintendo rep would come in with. Man, I wore anything that the Nintendo. So our Nintendo rep was named Fran, and he was cool as hell. And anything that he would give me, I would sport like it was, you know, like I was getting paid for it. And I loved like customers coming in, and like we would have our Nintendo DS kiosk that would have a couple of games on it. And they'd be like, oh, I don't know anything about this. I was like, cool. And I would just literally like pull out like a gunslinger, whip out my DS, and I'd swap the cartridge. Like, here you go. Why don't you try it? And it blew their minds. They were so excited. I felt so cool being able to just like, oh yeah, there's that demo over here, but here's the actual thing if you want to try it. I would just stand there with them and show them how to play stuff. I sold so many DSs, like just so many like cool games that people wouldn't have known otherwise. So that was always my favorite. I also made the mistake of after I stopped working retail, my wife and I would go like Black Friday shopping at Target, and I would like answer. I would see like I'd go look at the video game deals, and there would be a parent asking a question to somebody, and I would just like answer for them. And unfortunately, I was in a red shirt, and then I had a line of moms like, "Hey, I need your help too." I was like, "Fuck, I don't work here."
That has happened to me several times since leaving retail.
Yeah.
Same.
But also, like, I'm happy to help you. What questions do you have?
I've had that happen so many times. That reminds me though of like it's all I can picture though with you talking about the DS though is like a drug dealer like, hey, you want to see these games with like a trench coat is all I can picture Xando as right now.
Honestly, it would have been devastating if somebody would have just grabbed it, ripped the Velcro, and ran off, because I would have been out like $500. Because I had not only the DS, but I would literally have anywhere from like 20 to 30 games on my person.
Oh my God.
I just carried my entire DS collection with me. Like, so when they started like putting out those little like plastic carrying cases that would hold like 3 DS games, I had like 4 or 5 of those on me at a time. Like, I would just literally have everything available. So like I could just like let people try out different games, man. I also in that time loved getting the displays that they would send in. Like, I had a Brain Age display in my room, and I just used it to hold all my DS games.
That's pretty awesome. Those like cardboard standees.
Yeah. And getting just the promotional posters and stuff. I put my name on that shit even if I didn't like the game, because I just wanted to have my room decorated and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Well, I think it kind of leads into what were your favorite things about working for the job, or one thing that you miss about working in gaming retail, or just retail in general.
Yeah, the biggest thing is I would like teaching people about games that they would have kind of like what you were doing, kind of like talking about how Dale was talking about being the secret angel, and also with like you were talking about like showing people the games, just showing people stuff they would never think automatically to go to for games, and just seeing that joy of like I know exactly what Dale's talking about, like what games to get the kids, especially like for Christmas or something like that. Just telling the parents to help them have like a really good Christmas. I had like a couple times where people would come back after the fact and be like, "Hey, my kid loved all the suggestions you came up with." Stuff like that was the stuff that always made my day. It's like, yeah, I'm actually doing something that somebody at least appreciates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those moments were always just a boost. Like, I hate this job. And oh, hey, I don't hate it right now.
Yes. I have always been the type of person who really, really enjoyed sharing the things that I love with people. I mean, you heard it when I was talking about Jeff Rosenstock earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to shout out the openers because they were awesome. So I always loved that part. And that was honestly probably the reason I was so good at it. But the thing that was awesome to me about it was knowing that everybody that I was working with, we had a shared hobby. We had a shared love. Right. And so it was really easy to connect with people in that way, even if it was just for a few moments. And then knowing that they were going to enjoy their hobby, they were spending their money on things that were worthwhile because they had a chance to interact with me. That's just there's nothing like that as far as like, oh, man, like Xando just mentioned it. I am happy to answer your questions if you see me at a Target and you want to talk about video games, and it is insane that all three of us who are outside of retail now are like, yeah, but I'd still do it. And sometimes I'll do it for free.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy, and I think it just speaks to not only our passion around it, but just how passionate we are when it comes to gaming, that we would do it for free. And so the fact that I got to do it and get paid for it for a little while was really, really awesome.
Yeah, I think, and we might touch on this a little in a later question, but like how little those jobs paid is just the real bummer of it, because like it is such a cool thing. Like you really don't feel like you're doing hard work because you're just sharing what you love. And if those jobs paid more, like I'd probably still consider it. But they want like the top level talent. That was always the hardest thing, especially at like Family Video, is they wanted people who were like good and could connect with customers and suggest movies or video games or whatever, and like have a good rapport with people. But those people are worth more money than the minimum wage you were going to pay them.
Right.
Yep.
So if they could just like find some way to bump that up and be like, hey, we'll make more money by selling more things by having these quality people. But that's never, it's always the bottom line for them. How can we save as much money while making as much money? And that's the real bummer of it.
Welcome to another episode of Game.Communist, where Dale talks about CEO pay and the fact that any publicly traded company's primary responsibility is to their shareholders and not to their employees or to their customers, and how that's bullshit. And that's all I'm going to say about that for right now. This ends this episode of Game.Communist. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Hey, capitalism's always the bad guy.
I mean, sometimes it really is.
I also just like missed working with friends in a laid back environment where we could make up random games in the media department. Like the amount of times where we would just try to find random CDs or movies or game titles and just like, hey, no, we're just going to take one of the words here and replace it with boner and just wander around to see who could get the best one by the end of the night. We used to play a game at Best Buy where we would each, the people who were working in the media department would each get to pick a thing that the other person had to try and sell by the end of the night. Mm-hmm.
And it was it was great because it's like, all right, man, here's your like $700 copy of the like Halo limited edition Xbox 360. Yeah, you think that's tough? Enjoy your CD of gospel music.
Oh no.
I think we may have mentioned Ping Pals before. How I had to sell that to somebody.
Ping Pals.
Yes, people who don't listen to the podcast regularly might not know about Ping Pals. It's a Nintendo DS game that was released, I believe, in like 2006 or 2005.
Well, after PictoChat came out.
Yes, it was basically PictoChat, but worse somehow. There were different, it was like high-low games and stuff. Like if you just get a chance to look up Ping Pals when you get a chance, Dork, and just revel in how awful it is. I still have my copy. It's literally on my desk. I'm looking at it right now. But we had one copy left at Circuit City, and a friend of mine's like made a bet with me. He was also like running one of our games in our D&D group. And he's like, if you can sell this game before I sell it to somebody, I'll give your character laser eyes. And I fucking got laser eyes.
Amazing.
It's one of those things that, like, I'm pretty sure you had that on your utility belt for sure, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had to show people about Ping Pals in order to sell it to somebody. One other cool, just in terms of talking about just like cool, feel good, like helping people stories. I remember one time at Circuit City, there was someone coming in asking about Nintendo DS. They didn't really know anything about it. They wanted to get their nephew a gaming system, like portable, and I talked to him about the differences between the PSP and the Nintendo DS. I let them play with mine and kind of showed them a couple different titles and whatnot. And I didn't know it at the time, but it turns out it was a newer news anchor for our local radio or our local news station. Anu Prakash was her name. So for those of you who live in the Detroit area and watch ABC News, I don't know if she still is an anchor, but she definitely was at the time. Mm-hmm. And she was very, very thankful for me and like my helpful or my help that I gave to her. And she like actually came back another time and just like said, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for that. It was a huge hit. And then another time they brought their nephew in to say like, look at how much, like, I wanted to show you how much they love this thing. And it's all because you like took the time and you know, helped me find the right thing. So that was something that I still think about pretty consistently these days.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's very cool. Really anytime a customer came back to thank me for a recommendation or anything like that, it was like the highlight of my week. It was it was amazing because it showed that you were really making a difference in people's lives by like slinging video games, which sounds insane, but
yeah. Well, let's take a huge shift going from the good, and let's talk about the bad sides of working the job. What were the shitty things about working gaming retail?
Oh my God, there's so much.
There really is.
Actually, I wrote down one thing, but I thought of another thing as we were talking. The people who didn't understand how returns worked. And that whole entire nightmare. I have a specific scenario that was hilarious. Well, no, it wasn't hilarious. It's actually pretty sad, to be honest. Apparently, one of her family members had passed, and he had an Xbox One X, and she wanted to try to return it. She thought she could just return it, even though without the cords or anything like that and stuff like that. I'm like, no, he didn't have the cords and stuff like that. She thought I was just going to be a straight return, get her money back. I'm like, no, this is a system that's been used and like been used for months. Like you could tell that this was someone that had in their house for forever. And I'm just like, I tried to explain to her, like, this is not a return. I could do as an exchange, but not as a return. But she got very angry at me, acting like I was being the worst person. I'm like, I don't even have you don't have a receipt for this even. Like have you never tried to return anything without a receipt before? Because that's not how things work from what I understand. And just the amount of people that would try to bring stuff in without receipts, try to be like, oh, I can get my full money back on everything. I'm like, no, it's told very plainly in almost all of our policies, unless it's a pre-owned game, you're not getting your full money back. And just, I mean, there's definitely times where I definitely fudged that for people because they didn't understand what they were getting into or something like that, or it was they got their kid a game they should not have, even though I had told people before, hey, this is an M-rated game, you don't want to give your 10-year-old GTA 5.
Yeah.
Had enough of those happen. But it's like the amount of people who still always did that. And then of course there was a couple of people who tried to take advantage of our refund policies. Like there was one customer who would come in every single week, get a bunch of pre-owned stuff, and then like 5 days later come back and return all of it and get something else instead, just so he wasn't actually paying for it every single time. And it drove me insane.
Using you as like a rental place.
Yeah, exactly.
Retail place.
He was trying to use this as exactly like a rental place, even though that's not what GameStop was at all. Like he would do like $200 worth of returns and then leave with maybe paying $5 on whatever he grabbed. And I'm like, it drove me insane. And he kept doing it. We ended up banning him from doing returns though at some point because he kept doing it.
Yeah. And let's just be a lesson to those of you who may not have ever worked retail. Don't be a dick when you're trying to return stuff or take advantage of that. Like as Dork said, like most of the times we're willing to work with you. And I'm speaking on behalf of most retail workers. We're willing to work with you and help you out when we can. But if you come in all high and mighty, like you know what's exactly supposed to happen, then yeah, probably not so much. We're going to be a lot more rigid. But we do have a little bit of wiggle room, and we're willing to do it for you if you're like reasonable or cool. But if you're going to be a dick about it, nah, man, we're going to stick to the letter of the law.
Yeah. When someone got yelly, I never gave them an inch.
Yeah, you either have to be nice or you can know the letter of the law so well that there's nothing that we can do about it. Which I'm going to be perfectly honest, I have used several times for my benefit, knowing that, like, you know, hey, Blockbuster, what's your policy on used video game sales? Oh, really? So I can basically just flip video games, buy video games, trade them in at a different location, and basically get unlimited Blockbuster store credit? Cool. Like, that was great. Or like, oh, what's that, Walmart? You'll let me do one no receipt return on a sealed video game per year? Okay, cool. I'm going to save up my Microsoft points and get a sealed game that I know is going to go for a lot. And hold its value, and I'll just return it for store credit and get a game that I actually wanted that Microsoft doesn't make.
Oh yeah, that's another perk that we all forgot about, was the retail training that you could do, and then like that you just build up points and get free video games.
I got that a couple times with the GameStop.
Good times.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, but as far as bad sides of working the job, one of my least favorite things was like shortages. You know, supply chain issues where it was like everybody wanted a Wii. We get like 2 Wiis. Yeah. Then I'd have a week of people just screaming. Oh, like yelling and all of that. And it got to the point where we would straight up like start. Thank you for calling Best Buy. We do not have Wiis. How can I help you? Click.
Yep.
Like the amount of times I had that with just the Xbox Series X and S and PS5 during that launch window.
Yep.
Oh God, it was the worst.
Yeah, it was terrible. And then the second worst part of that was people who thought that I made the rules somehow. like I'm getting paid as close to minimum wage as they are legally allowed to. And I'm here telling you, like, no, I'm sorry, your shit's been open and also like spit in for some reason. I can't return this.
Well then.
And they're like, well, why not? Why won't you do it? And I'm like, because it says here on the back of the receipt. And they're like, well, why did you do? And I'm like, I didn't do any of this, sir. I have I have as close to the amount of power that you do as possible. Like, I can't make any changes here. You
I
know,
did not write the policy, sir.
exactly. It's absolutely ludicrous, and so people just like misplacing their anger at me for those supply chain shortages, for the fact that they didn't pre-order, and they're like, oh, I wanted it day one. And it's like, well, it's like an Atlas game. We were only going to get 2 of them, like that sort of stuff. Pre-ordering back then made sense. Pre-ordering now in the age of digital makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then people who would just yell for like no reason, one of my favorite things was, it's like, there's a bundle that we would sell, and it's like, it's all of these different items that are bundled together. And the price for the bundle is just the price of all of the items.
Mm-hmm.
And people would be mad at me about it. It's like, what do you just don't buy it? The other items are available separately. You don't have to do that. It's just a suggestion.
Oh, I hated that when we were selling PS5s, that they made us sell them in bundles at points, and people were like, why can't I buy it separately? I'm like, I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not in charge. Don't get mad at me.
Yeah, but that is at least worthy of being upset about. Like, not at you. You didn't make the call.
For sure.
But I'm saying, when I was at Best Buy, it was like, you could just like take the HDMI cable out and we would still sell it to you. Yep. It was literally just a sign saying like, hey, you're probably going to want all of this stuff. You might as well get it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the same vein, I always hated how much pressure management would put on selling so much to people when they're already into an expensive hobby. Feeling like I was taking advantage of like the grandmas who would come in, like, I'm finally, there's a Wii in stock and I'm finally getting one for my grandson. What does he need? And I'm like, well, you need the Wii, you need this, you're going to need remotes, you're going to need these fucking useless plastic tennis rackets that wrap around your Wii remote so that it feels like you're playing tennis. You're going to need 6 of those. I just hated
6 of those though.
Yeah. Yep. I just hated pushing all of that stuff. And granted, there were times where people came in, like, I worked in a wealthy area, so there's somebody, just give me everything I need, and I'm like, okay, you clearly don't care. I'm going to give you all this stuff so that my manager
you're going to loan that on them.
Yeah, but the people who were like, they was like, hey, that was great. You sold that. What accessories you sell with it? I was like, nothing. They didn't need it.
Yeah.
And then just like getting pissed. Like, I'm taking care of them the way they need to be taken care of instead of pushing all the extra shit on them.
Right. Yeah. I will never forget the meeting that we had where we were talking about, like, what are some accessories that you can sell with gaming consoles? And everybody goes around and they're like, extra controllers, like a cable to hook it up to your TV, battery packs, so that, like, rechargeable batteries, so that way you don't have to keep buying batteries. And it was all like sensible stuff from all the employees. Yeah. And then the manager straight up goes like, what about a new TV?
Oh God, yeah.
Oh my God. Are you fucking kidding me, guy? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, if they need a new TV, they come in for a new TV. That's not the sort of shit that you just impulse buy.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh. Yeah. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
And I think we again, in a previous episode that Dork didn't listen to.
I feel attacked.
So did I at the beginning of this episode.
Damn.
The lady who was very angry at me for having a Wii as soon as it launched, because I took the day off and went and stood in line somewhere else to get one.
Right.
Yeah. And we thought we were ripping off the system when we literally, like, consoles, you just can't do anything. There's no markup on those, because those are like, they make their money on the accessories, so that's why they push them so fucking hard. But the people who were mad at me for getting what I wanted by going, to not even my own store, not even trying to use my discount, going and paying full price somewhere else so I could have it. Sorry that I prepared and you didn't.
I remember when the Dreamcast came out, I specifically requested that morning off so that I could go to my KB Toys and stand in line and buy one at full ass price, because I knew we were going to have some. And then I took it to my car, came and clocked in, but I had to take time off. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I remember taking the week off for Guitar Hero 3 when that came out, and they fucked up and scheduled me the day that it came out.
Oh, I'll never forget though that the only reason I got my PS5 is because you both know Johnny. He actually
With Johnny Riot, who's in the Discord occasionally.
Yeah. He texted me. I literally just got home off of work from GameStop. He texted me, "Hey, pre-orders just went live for the PS5s." I had to run back to my store to pre-order mine, and I was lucky to get my pre-order in. It was one of the most stressful half hour of my life. Like, am I gonna get it? I was panicked.
Shout out to Johnny Riot.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I started my job at GameStop the day after the Switch launched, and I had pre-ordered mine at another store, and so I was like, "Hey, I'm just going to tell you right now, my first training day was the day getting ready for the Switch launch." And I was like, "I need to be out of here so I can go get in line and get my Switch at the other store." But
at least they knew you were passionate.
Yes, exactly. Well, so what were some straight up nightmare stories or the wackiest thing that you witnessed while on the job?
I had speaking of the 2020 holiday season, I had outside my store. I came back. People were camped outside my store on Black Friday because they knew they were going to have I think it was 6 or 4 PS5s and 12 Xbox Series X's. And then when I got there, people started yelling at me that somebody else had cut in line, and I'm like, I wasn't here. So I was panicked, I didn't know what happened. I don't know what to do. Someone said the police had to show up and talk to 2 people because they thought somebody else had a gun, and they were about to pull it on. So I was I don't know what happened, and they were trying to act like I was responsible for the whole kerfuffle that happened outside my store before I got there. That was the moment that I'm like, I don't want to deal with the police more than this, please.
Yeah.
Yikes.
That's insane.
I think that's the winner.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I have 2 kind of hilarious stories. One was from a Black Friday when I was working at Hebe Toys, and this doesn't have anything to do with video games. But we had a line that was literally wrapped all the way around the store. And that was it. The fire marshal was at our front door, letting people in, and he was like, "This is how many people are allowed to be here." And so what we were doing was, as we were getting the high priority items, we were just going down the line, and it was who wants this? Who wants this? Who wants this? Who wants this? And it was the year Tickle Me Elmo came out.
Oh, jeez.
No.
And I'm like, I've got the last Tickle Me Elmo. One of the customers who we gave it to earlier was like, I don't actually want this. And so I'm going down the line, and I'm like, who wants this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? And I pass there's a woman with a stroller, and I pass her, and she's like, no, I don't want that. And then I get to the woman behind her in the stroller with a stroller, and she says, oh yeah, I do. I really want that. And I'm like, great, here it is. And I hand it to her, and I turn around and I start to walk back up to the counter, and I hear the other woman say, actually, I do want it. Can I have it? And the other woman was like, no, I have it. And then she's like, well, yeah, but he asked me, and it keeps going. And then boom, all of a sudden they are pushing their strollers out of the way to start having a fist fight over it.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
And so I have to run back there and break it up and no, she has it. You passed on it. It was just insane. So yeah, there was that. And then I will never forget the moment where at Best Buy, we had spent all night setting everything up. Everything was beautiful. There was a huge pyramid of CDRs that we had made in front of the computer section. And at Best Buy, we passed tickets out beforehand for all the high value stuff. Right. And so we open the door, and this guy squeezes under my arm as I'm opening the door and sprints back towards the computer section. And there's this huge pyramid of CDRs, and he thinks he's gonna hurdle it, and he does not. And he just eats shit in the middle of the computer area. CDR packages go flying everywhere. A couple break open. There's CDs everywhere. And we're like, holy shit. And he like scrambles up to his feet and gets to the computer area and is like, hey, I want this laptop. And he's like, cool, where's your ticket? And the guy's like, what ticket?
Well, it turns into a scene from Indiana Jones where you throw him out like, no ticket.
No ticket.
I wish I had thought of that, but no, it turns out this dude just like busted his face and knees and shit up for no
nothing.
good reason. It was so awesome.
That's amazing.
Oh man, this isn't a my own story, but it's a Black Friday story I always love telling. A buddy of mine, Teddy, it was his first week working at Best Buy. He's in the computer section, and the doors open on Black Friday. The very first customer in the door runs straight to him, and he goes, "Where are your electric razors?" And Teddy's like brand new, and he goes, "We have electric razors." Why the fuck are you going to the computer section for an electric razor? Is that the guy just go? Is that the guy's response was just to go? Brr, and so he went brr, right back at him and he walked away.
What an insane interaction. You know that we have reached late stage capitalism when someone is like panicked about an electric razor.
Where are your electric razors?
And just as we sell electric razors. What?
Oh my god.
What my worst one personally was working at Circuit City and also Toys R Us overnight stock.
Okay.
I don't know why I decided to do this, but working Black Friday from like 3 a.m. until 6 p.m. and then going home and sleeping for an hour and then getting back up and then working 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. the next day for
Oh my god.
overnight stock at Toys R Us was
Oh my god.
the stupidest thing I ever did.
That sounds
Sounds
miserable.
horrible.
Yeah, not good. Well, we're running long, so let's run through these last couple questions real quick. Is there anything that would be surprising to outsiders about your time in retail?
The literal bare amount of money that anybody gets, especially like higher management. Like as a store manager, I got like $16 an hour. Like, and that was like 3 years ago. That's nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's insane. Also, just to add to that, how little most of the employees will care about anything since they're not paid enough to.
Mhm.
Like,
Facts.
you know, yeah, it's just like, I just, okay, you stole a thing. Like, you're banned from the store. That's all the power I have, like that
Yep.
sort of stuff. And then also how low the margins are despite
Oh my god. Yes.
how big gaming has gotten. It's crazy. It's like
New
bad
systems,
business.
new
Yeah.
systems, and new games is nothing.
Yep. It's wild.
I would throw out how little experience you need to be successful in big box gaming retail. Like, so long as you can just have a basic idea, like you don't have to, like I think are the exception to the rule where we were also, experienced and could talk to these things. If you could just like, oh yeah, this goes with this, you're just going to be fine. Like you don't need to know things to
Yeah.
to sell stuff.
Oh yeah, it was also just like a meat grinder. It was like
Yeah.
get bodies in because people were leaving so fast. The turnover was so high.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane.
Well, that's going to lead us right into our sponsored question. And this question is sponsored by Amazon.com. Walmart was too chicken shit to kill the American dream, so we had to do it. Get your everything through Amazon and never support a small business again. Let's think back to happier times. And if you got to open a niche video game shop, what would it be like? What would it be called? Let's get idyllic.
You go down.
You want to go first?
You got
All
it.
right, I'll go first. I want to open a shop that has like all the hard to find fandom shit. Like you're looking for some crazy ass Digimon, we probably got it, or we can order it, or I know a place, that sort of thing. I want to be welcoming. I want to make it clean and have it smell good so that it's not just like a boys club in there, which is so common for video game stores. Similarly, the walls will not be painted either black or white. There will be like, I know, right? It'll look sweet. There'll be like a good color scheme, like that sort of thing. And then maybe some sort of like after school program for the kids, since much like the Wu-Tang Clan, Dale is for the children.
And also like the Wu-Tang Clan, Dale ain't nothing to fuck with.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Straight out the underground.
Yeah.
Similarly, I would want a community shop where we could sell cool shit, but also game together. Like tournaments, an area for like streaming, etc. I would love to have regulars come in and just be friendly and helpful with everyone while having a good time and encouraging them to get better at whatever game they want to play. Like I would love to set up like fighting game tournaments where like people who are just like hardcore into the shit and then some people who are like still brand new are learning from one another. Like, oh, you like this character? This is how you can be better at it. And just set up that kind of like friendly environment. Like we all got into gaming because we love to have fun. Let's do it together and not be dicks about it.
Yeah.
That would be my dream. I don't have a name for it yet. I'm sure I could come up with something cool, but that's my first thought is just somewhere where we can play together, have fun with it, and also just have cool shit to sell if you want it.
Nice. Big thing I was always thinking is like a place that is not a big thing as I've kind of boils down to. I want a place that's not profit driven, a place that's more just getting games into the hands of people who have never really maybe heard of some of those games and maybe would never tried them as is. So like I know some people who would never touch a roguelike a day in their life. I was like, but they like romance story games. I'm like, hey, try Hades because it has some of those elements, but it also has this other elements of these other style of games. Or hey, I don't really care for open world games, but I really care for super driven story based games. Like, hey, there's Baldur's Gate 3 that has stuff like a lot of story based stuff, but it is pretty open world, but it might actually really cater to that story based games. More getting people to go outside their limits and also places for them to try some of those games so they can actually see if they like them instead of just throwing, it's like, hey, here's a suggestion. And if they couldn't, they are a little more scared to buy those games because they haven't even had a good feel for it at all. Like you can only talk about a game so much, show videos so much before letting someone try that game and actually realize, oh, this actually might be for me.
Yeah, almost like a gaming blind date, kind of.
Yeah.
I was going to say more like a guy who maybe has like a belt pack with a whole bunch of DS games. This idea that you said was lame as hell earlier. But
hey,
now
I wasn't saying the concept was lame. I was saying the execution was lame.
I think the belt pack specifically is the problem.
I think that
like
might
if
be
you had a counter you could go to get the DS games, that'd be fine.
Nah, man.
Yeah, or like
then you're just a
you
mountain of a man with $800 worth of DS games on his fucking pocket.
You want to see these video games?
What are you buying? To paraphrase the greatest rapper, Ill Mitch, your mama's whack, your granny's whack. I got a Nintendo DS in my fanny pack. All right.
Amazing.
High art right there.
It is. It's truly the greatest.
This is the sort of thing that you miss out on if you don't listen to the podcast.
It's true. And I know this is an episode specifically I know that we have tried to do a couple of times with a couple of different guests. And so if you're listening and you're like, hey, damn it, I was supposed to be on this episode, I'm sorry. But also there's this thing called the Super OK Discord where you can jump in and go to the podcast discussion channel and share your stories too.
Yes, please do.
One thing that retail workers love, it's talking about themselves and the stories that they have.
Yeah.
So by all means, go in and tell us your wackiest Black Friday thing. Tell us where your electric razors are, if you have them. And just come and hang out, man. We're in there all the time. We're chatting all the time, playing different games. We literally have our dream gaming store is our Discord where we get to hang out and play games and make recommendations. Shit, we sold Tubbs on Slay the Spire this past episode, and he's in the Discord talking about how, hey, thanks Dane and Dale for getting me into this. Like, we're here to do that in the Discord. So if that sounds like something cool that you would want to do, please jump in there. You can find me in the Discord as Zando Calrissian. How can you guys be found on the socials?
I'm Dork of the Ninjas almost everywhere. I'm in the Discord server. That's me. You've probably seen me hanging around a little bit here and there. But that's, if you ever want to get in touch with me, just yell that into the ether and you'll get a hold of me somehow.
Nice. I am a 20-sided ninja, both in the Discord and on Blue Sky. And really quick, I just want to give a shout out to our Patreon members. We could not do this without you. Thank you so much for helping keep the podcast free for everybody. Dork, you got anything you want to shout out?
Biggest thing I'd say is charity I really appreciate is Cure Alzheimer's. They have their overhead is completely covered by the board, so any money that gets donated to them goes to Alzheimer's research. It doesn't go to like paying for anybody. The board pays for all the employees that work for the actual charity.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Alzheimer's is complete and total bullshit. So anything we can do to get rid of it is huge. So, yeah.
Before we forget, I feel like we need to say "fuck you, Dan."
Oh yeah, we do.
Well, fuck you, Dan.
He seems like the kind of guy who would try to buy a whole bunch of stuff used at GameStop and return it the next week. So we're not standing for that. So fuck you, Dan.
That's such a specific and incorrect insult. I love it.
Dan's gonna be like, why am I catching these strays?
Dan catches strays all the time. That's why we love him. And also fuck him.
You know that if you listen to the podcast.
Hey, so what's this podcast y'all talking about? What are we doing?
You'll notice that we didn't ask you to spell your Discord name because we didn't want to run into any issues.
Just pulling back the curtain a little bit, I had to send an email invite to Dork and the Ninjas here. And the motherfucker spelled his name incorrectly.
His literal government name
His
spelled
real
incorrectly.
name, yes.
I resemble that remark.
It's ridiculous.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Super OK Podcast. We hope you had fun. We hope you're going to find your electric razors. Say goodbye, everybody.
Have a super okay day.
If you're listening, thanks for listening. We love you.
Have a good one.
Where are your electric razors?